Coming up, what an excellent day for holy water. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 93 of the Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate The Exorcist, minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And I'm Father David Mowry.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. And folks, you may not be able to tell, but this is our second round of recording for this episode. The first one got, I guess you could say, PAZUZED. I blame Captain Howdy. He is in here with us, and he is not happy that we got a priest on again. This is Father David Mowry. Hello, Father David.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back. You know, I paid good money for that digital incense that the very unsuspicious man in the trench coat told me would definitely work for podcasts, and I feel as though I am owed my money back.
Oh my goodness! You know what? Like the digital scent still lingers. But and hopefully that'll see us through.
Yeah.
All right.
I love that non-fungible incense.
Yeah. Is that what you call the NFI?
NFI.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. NFF, non-fungible frankincense. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay. So, folks, let's jump right into it. Our minute begins with Karis saying "holy water,"
And then ends with Chris saying, "No, I'm just exhausted from work."
Aren't we all, Chris? Aren't we all? Okay, let's get back to the top of this minute here. You'll remember last time, folks, Karis had just taken a bottle of something out of his coat pocket.
Or someone.
Or somewhere.
Or somehow.
It's good to know we remember our bad jokes.
I don't know what's bad about it. This is comedy
Of
gold.
course,
Are
of
you
course.
kidding?
Hey, wait, Father David, isn't any joke you tell technically a dad joke?
I strive not to have a dad joke sense of humor. For my day job, I teach at Mundelein Seminary, which has a student population of graduate students, so in their 20s and 30s. And so there's a certain reputation that can build up around you in a student body. I don't know if either of you have any experience with that. So you have to watch the words that come out of your mouth pretty carefully.
Well, yeah, I'm already fallen in that respect. I am the Lord of dad jokes over here. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but like I said, folks, Karis had just taken a bottle of something out from his coat pocket, and the demon asked what it was. And I think the best way to answer that question, and the best way to kick off this minute, is with another small reading. So here we go. A reading from the book of Blatty. The demon looked wary. What is that? Don't you know? Asked Karis, his thumb half covering the mouth of the vial as he started to sprinkle its contents on Reagan. It's holy water, devil. Immediately, the demon was cringing, writhing, bellowing in terror and in pain. It burns! It burns! Stop it! Cease! Priest! Bastard! Cease! Expressionless, Karis stopped sprinkling. Hysteria. Suggestion. She did read the book. He glanced at the tape recorder. Why bother? He noticed the silence, looked at Reagan, knit his brows. What's this? What's going on? The demonic personality had vanished, and in its place were other features, which were similar, yet different. And the eyes had rolled upward into their sockets, exposing the whites. Now murmuring, slowly, a feverish gibberish. Karis came around to the side of the bed, leaned over to listen. What is it? Nothing. And yet, it's got cadence, like a language. Could it be? He felt the fluttering of wings in his stomach, gripped them hard, held them still. Come on, don't be an idiot. And yet... Karis straightened. Who are you? He asked. The entity answered, groaning whisper, in pain, whites of eyes, lids fluttering. The cracked, breathy voice, like the soul of its owner, seemed cloistered in a dark, curtained space beyond time. Is that your name? Then, shortly, it ceased. Are you able to understand me? Silence. Only breathing. Deep. Oddly muffled. The eerie sound of sleep in an oxygen tent. The Jesuit waited. Hoped for more. Nothing came. And there we are. Interesting stuff again. I love Blatty's descriptions. He's so good at evoking imagery that's sad and haunting at the same time. And the sad plus the haunting is what makes it scary, I think. But yeah, so what did we think of the conclusion of his scene in the book?
No, it's interesting because the movie doesn't have the ability at this point, right, in its structure to really slow down much, right? It's going to take a really interesting turn where we're going into the bureaucracy and then it's sort of a different fight.
Yeah.
But the book can have this time where it's like breathing, right? Like, okay, let's think about that. Let's be with Karras as he thinks there. And where in a movie, you just don't really have that affordance.
Yeah. But yeah, let's see how it compares to our minute in the film here. So we are back at the top of this minute. Howdy has just asked, "What's that?" And we are now on a shot of Karras. It starts with him looking down, but as he answers, "Holy water," we see that he looks up, perhaps to catch her expression, or his expression, or its expression. He wants to see how this lands. He stands up, and the camera follows him, and he makes his way to the foot of the bed, and we can see now that mask is back. You can see it just as he turns away, perhaps to protect himself. Remember, he was just disappointed by La Plume de ma Tante, so maybe he doesn't want to get his hopes up here. Now, we cut back, and she whispers, "You keep it away." Another cut. Karras is now at the foot of the bed. He begins to sprinkle her with it, moving his arm in a cross pattern, and Reagan immediately reacts, screaming, "It burns!" We then cut to a close-up of Reagan in profile as she writhes on the bed. Something about Linda Blair's face scrunching up like that really adds to the demonic look of the makeup. Her eyes all but disappear in those deep sockets. Actually, these last 3 minutes, we've gotten to see a very expressive Linda Blair under all that makeup. The scene starts out with her smiling smugly. What an excellent day for an exorcism. And she's cracking jokes, La Plume de ma Tante. That old chestnut, you know. She gets really intense until she rots and lies stinking in the earth. And then we can clearly see her looking scared as Karras brings out the holy water. And now she's got her face all scrunched up. Like, we almost can't tell it's a smile or a grimace or what. More on that later. But what I'm saying is, this is a testament to both Dick Smith and Linda Blair that we are able to glean so much through this already amazing makeup job. I'm thinking of just a few years earlier, Keenan with like Planet of the Apes, and it seems like you sort of had to make a choice between an amazing makeup spectacle or a masterfully subtle performance. And folks, that's not to say that Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowall didn't do a brilliant job. They did that simply by virtue of being Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowall.
Right. But they couldn't do that with their cheeks and their subtle expressions.
Exactly.
They have these twitches
or their faces.
That happen. Yeah, exactly.
So they had to work through that like thick makeup. You know, there's interviews where they say that they had to exaggerate all their expressions just so it would show up through the prosthetics, right?
Right.
Now here we can see very subtle expressions from Linda Blair, right? For one thing, like there's not a big like piece of rubber covering her brow, so we get to see all the expression coming from there, right? And the rest of her face too. It's completely free for her to act. And I know we said this before, folks, but there is behind the scenes footage of Linda Blair in this horrific makeup, just being Linda Blair. And it's not scary at all. Like if you saw her in real life, you'd be like, that little girl is going to win whatever Halloween costume contest her school is putting on, right? And again, seeing her behind the scenes really makes you appreciate the performance she is giving us in front of the camera, this performance that made people faint in theaters.
And the use of the word performance, I had two questions based off of that. So first, in The Shining, I can't remember his name, but the actor who played Danny, Kubrick was
Danny Lloyd.
Danny Lloyd. That's right. Kubrick was really careful to keep Danny Lloyd's experience of filming separate from all the horror that was going on. That was something that Kubrick was really careful about in terms of how Danny was handled and how he was treated on set to make sure that that sense of innocence and childlikeness was preserved both for the actor and for the character. What did Friedkin do with Linda Blair to get this kind of performance from her? How did they handle the fourth wall shift in her performance? She's walking around in the big scary makeup, and then she's doing all this work on set.
Yeah, our understanding of it, this is partially from Friedkin's recollection, partially from Blair's recollection, is that they treated her like a grown-up actor.
Yes.
So there are really fun photos of her going out back and raising chickens and doing all sorts of things in her free time. So she wasn't doing the kind of like method acting stuff that would have been popular at the time of like Pacino or Faye Dunaway, or like staying in that terrible headspace all the time.
Right.
But she did, when she was auditioning, say that she understood that the script was about masturbation and that it was about violence, and that she was ready for that.
Right.
And her mother. Her mother and her seem to be on the same page about it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like constructing a performance the way you would with a child or an animal.
Right.
By almost all accounts.
Yeah. She had said she had read the entire book beforehand.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's more than I could say.
But yeah, no.
Interesting.
David, yeah. That was a really
interesting.
Good, oh, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, then the second question I had in terms of performance doesn't have to do with the actor, but has to do with Captain Howdy, because I think there's performing happening, not just by Linda Blair, but by Captain Howdy as well. Because we've been talking the last couple minutes about how perceptive Captain Howdy is, and how Captain Howdy is playing chess while Karras is trying to play checkers, and is always seeming to be one step ahead of our poor scientifically minded priest. And here, as a Catholic priest, I, of course, come to this discussion with a firm belief in the reality of spiritual powers, including the spiritual powers of hell and the devil and all of his other fallen angels. And part of that worldview means that the spiritual reality of things is something perceptible, perhaps in ways that we wouldn't be able to articulate in a scientific or empirically based way. But I would believe that an unclean spirit, like Captain Howdy, would be able to tell the difference between holy water and not holy water. And then I base this off of, there are stories of saints who are able to tell the difference between bread that is unconsecrated, just normal bread, and bread that has been consecrated at a Catholic mass. And they're able to tell that at a glance. So there is something spiritually real that they can sense in something that's been consecrated to God. And holy water doesn't rise to that kind of level of holiness, but it has been set aside for use in holy things, for use in baptism and the blessings of places and persons and the like. So I find it hard to believe that Captain Howdy, perceptive fellow that he is, would need to be told what's actually in the bottle. And then the other thing is, he screams out, "It burns," when the water splashes on him. And, when you burn your hand on the stove, you're not going to go, "It burns." You're going to make some kind of noise of pain, but it sounds a lot like the robot devil from Futurama. You can't just tell. You can't have characters saying how they feel. That makes me angry. It's just very, very performative. So I look at this minute. I look at the Captain Howdy's writhing on the bed and screaming in pain, and there's part of me thinks like, okay, this is all an act. This is part of that four-dimensional chess that Captain Howdy is giving Karras what Karras wants to see when Karras is using unblessed water. Karras wants to see a reaction from someone who's deluded. They operate within this delusional sense, like, it's holy water, so I'm going to react this way because I'm possessed, and it's all part of the psychosis. And that is only going to further unsettle Karras, keep him on the back foot, and make sure that Captain Howdy is the one setting the tone of the conversation.
So do you think that Captain Howdy knows that Karras will catch him performing, and that will just discombobulate him? Is that sort of the idea?
So that kind of gets into what happens later in the movie, or even later in this minute, because there is. And I would jump too ahead, but there's. Part of this is the danger of dealing with the spawn of Satan, with the spawn of the father of lies. You're never sure what exactly is true. You're never going to know what exactly is happening. I'm with Father Marin. Don't talk to it. Don't interact with it. Don't believe anything that it says. You're better off ignoring it and invoking the name of Jesus, who is the truth, rather than trying to sort of like, okay, well, what does this reveal and what is that? Because all of that serves is to direct your attention toward the evil one, toward the unclean spirit, to the exclusion of anything else.
There is
very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Father David. There is a moment in the book a little bit later on when Father Karras goes to visit Reagan another time, and one of the first things that Howdy says is like, "Oh, by the way, sorry about that holy water business. I hope it didn't discombobulate you too much. I'm actually surprised you're back. But then I remembered priests have no shame. So Yeah. So, but no, it's exactly as you say, Father David. It like you can see this as Howdy right now, just being like, oh, the pain, oh, the agony, oh, and then reaches under the pillow, checks his script. It's like, oh, torment. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. A long time ago, one of our listeners wrote in and asked about like why is Chris an actor in this movie? Like why is that? And that's something that is so fundamental to this movie. But I haven't seen anyone really address that question. So we've had the opportunity to think about that a long time. Lester has brought up the idea that Blatty is basing this off of his friend Shirley MacLaine, like her personality, and then she just happens to be an actor. So Chris is an actor. I think. Right. That's valid. But then the more you think about, we've also said that Chris being an actor would be one of the few ways that she would be rich enough and famous enough to support a little girl on her own at this time period, right? Where she's a single mother with resources and connections.
Yes, and also when things go wrong, be able to afford 88 doctors.
Right. But the idea of performance is something I've been really thinking about since our listener Mike asked that. Yeah, because I don't know how it was for you, Father David, if you even want to get into it, but a lot of people that I've heard who grew up in the church who became entertainers talk about like some of their earliest role models in performance, whether that's singers or actors, being the clergy. And seeing them like the cantors or even priests and pastors like that was their exposure where they didn't have an arts background. They would see their clergy people. And so like Karras is going through all of these deep psychological problems. He's also someone who, as we see in the movie, still has to go to his job and pardon the expression, but like perform in front of his parish, right? And then Captain Howdy seems to be doing all these layers of performance you're talking about, and we also have Kinderman, who seems to be like this overgrown theater kid who accidentally ended up a police detective. Yeah. Right?
You want to see a movie?
Yeah, exactly. And he's doing his shtick, right? So I think performance is sort of key here. Chris off screen and Chris on screen, and Father Karras and Father Dyer on stage and off stage.
Yes, and I like also Father David. You had mentioned in previous minutes the perception of these unclean spirits, right? How they can. I'm trying to remember exactly how you put it, but you were like they can see like people's inner thoughts or their I guess their feelings or their intentions, like we would like a color.
Boy, if I said that, that's very well put.
Man, it's really good. We have it on record.
Oh well, good.
Yes.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think there's something to that. You can see that in the accounts of Jesus's own exorcism ministry in the Gospels, where unclean spirits will know Jesus's true identity before he has said anything. As far as anyone knows publicly, Jesus is this son of a carpenter from Nazareth, and he's currently stationed in Capernaum. And he's got some really interesting things to say about God and the kingdom of heaven. And we should listen to this fellow. And so for someone just out of the middle of the synagogue say, "I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Right. Do you mean to destroy us?" Everyone goes, "Whoa, what is happening?" But we, as readers of the gospel, have the dramatic irony of knowing that the unclean spirit is actually right about who Jesus is and is able to correctly perceive that. And how Jesus then deals with that situation, that there's a whole other exegetical topic I could go into with all that. But there is this understanding of the power of these spiritual beings to perceive spiritual realities in ways that are very present to them and that are real, and they are able to perceive a different mode of reality than you and I can. Even though we will get glimpses of that when we encounter something truly beautiful and we're moved to the depths of our soul. We're responding to a spiritual reality, whether it's something we see in another person or something we encounter in nature. When we're touched to the depths of our being, there's a spiritual response we're making to something that's real in front of us that goes beyond the simply empirical, where a photo or an audio recording would capture some of it, but it's being there in that moment that really drives home something that words have a difficult time expressing.
Yeah. It makes me think like, and our question about like when did Captain Howdy know about the holy water, right? And it's like, did it like when it hit him, was he like, wait a minute, this isn't holy water? But now, I mean, like after everything that we've been talking about just now, I wonder if Captain Howdy understood it as soon as Karras walked into the door, right? Or not walked into the door, sorry, walked through the door, right? That would kind of be, right? Yeah. Priest walks into a bar. Ow. But no, I can see like you sprinkle fake holy water on a vampire, and they're like, no, wait a minute, what is this, right? But then Karras comes in with the fake holy water, right? And before he even takes it from his pocket, right, I can see Captain Honeybee like, oh, here we go. All right, well, I guess I better play my part. Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, Father David, about when Karras is sprinkling this holy water. Is that accurate to what a priest might do in this situation? He sort of does the sign of the cross with it.
Oh yeah.
Well, so professionally, there's no set school for how to sprinkle holy water. It depends upon the needs of the situation. For the most part, in a how would I put it? In a liturgical use of holy water, say at a sprinkling rite at Mass, when there has been a kind of a commemoration of everyone's baptismal promises, and the whole assembly is sprinkled with holy water as a sign of their initial immersion to holy water. It's just sprinkled all over the place. The priest just goes crazy. And maybe you've seen videos of, say, Byzantine Orthodox priests. They're just these huge branches, and they're just absolutely soaking everybody in the church. It's amazing. In a funeral liturgy, the casket is sprinkled with holy water when it first comes into the church, again, as that reminder of baptism. And the rubrics of the church simply state that the casket is sprinkled with holy water. And so it's up to the priest's interpretation for what exactly that means. For a situation like this, when you're blessing somebody, a sign of the cross is a very performative way to sprinkle holy water. It's not bad per se, but based on what we know Karras is doing, he's trying to test how deluded this little girl is. And so he's going to make the big obvious sign of the cross as he does it to really drive home like, this is holy water. Look at me. It's a cross. Ooh. That I don't know how much of that is Karras making that intentional decision, or how much of that is coming from the professional advisor, a priest that they have on the project, who's saying, oh yeah, do it this way. Were it me and I were in this unenviable position, I would simply do 3 sets of sprinkling, in order to symbolize baptism into the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the sacrament of baptism involves a triple immersion into water, either pouring over the head or dunking the whole person into the baptismal font. And so in my own personal liturgical style, I just do 3 sets of blessings to evoke the Trinity. The big sign of the cross, usually only when I'm feeding my inner theater kid and I'm feeling particularly demonstrative would I do something like that.
Interesting. Oh wow. This actually makes me think about when I was little. We would go to church for Christmas Eve, and they would, the priest would walk up and down the aisles, and they would sprinkle everybody with holy water as we were sitting and we were singing. When I was very, very young, I was reading I had brought to church a picture book of the Nativity story, right? And I had just happened to open the page onto the part about King Herod, sending out that message to kill all the firstborn. There was a picture of King Herod, and as the priest passed, the holy water fell onto my book, onto King Herod, and I leaned over to my mom and I was like, "Mom, he just blessed King Herod." And I was all worried. I was like, are we going to get in trouble? What's happening?
Yeah. King Herod needed all the help he can get. And I don't think that holy water was going to be enough.
Right. I'm pretty sure Mom said the exact same thing, something to that effect. Yeah. I was like, well, yeah, he needs it. Yeah. Guys, what do we make of Karras' expression after this? So after this big performance by Captain Howdy / sick Reagan, we get a shot of Karras, and his hand kind of comes back down from his sprinkling of the holy water, and he's got this look on his face. What are we taking from that? Is this disappointment? Is this awe? Is this what are we thinking?
I look at it and I see a scientist very carefully observing his test subject, because he's undertaking this from a psychological point of view. This little girl is deluded. I'm going to play into the delusion and see how strong the response is. Now I'm a priest, not a psychologist, so I don't know how good of a psychological move this is. Kind of on the face of this, doesn't seem like a great experiment. I don't know how much actionable data you would get out of this, but maybe Karras knows what he's doing. I'll grant him that on the psychologist side. On the priest side, well, I would have gone in there with real holy water. But anyway, with his face, I think he's overcome by the strength of the reaction here, where yes, this is what he was kind of hoping for. Like one of his hypotheses would have been that she's going to react to this like it's real holy water. But there's also this like she's really reacting to this as if it's holy water. Now I don't know what's happening here exactly.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. I like that in this shot. We do see Karras in like a medium shot, so a lot of his body, but his eyes are really sunken into his Jason Miller blackness, which the movie does a lot with, right? Yeah. It like allows his eyes to fall off in the darkness, so we have trouble reading him a lot. And so I like that here, that it is ambiguous. The script is less ambiguous, if I could read a little bit from it.
Sure.
So we don't have Karras. So it just says that Karras sprinkles its contents over Reagan. It doesn't have the theatricality of the cross sign here. And then Reagan has it burns me, it burns, it burns. Ah, cease, priest, bastard, cease. Oh, wow. So even more robot devil dialogue.
Yeah. So that's stage version Captain Howdy, and then here we got camera version Captain Howdy.
Right. And then this says Karras looks disappointed. So it tells us that. It tells you that is a performance note in the script, which, when we adapt from the script to the actor and their interpretation, and then the director working with the actor and then working on how to film the actor with the cinematographer. I think I'm pretty glad that we've made it more ambiguous. Than he is disappointed. Yeah, as Blatty originally had it.
It would be disappointing just to see his kind of shoulders slump and he hangs his head like, rats. Oh, man. Shucks.
He just kicks the air. He's like, shucks. But no, both of you guys are absolutely right. Like, you could almost read this expression. You could read it either way. You could almost read it like awe, like he's finally witnessing something miraculous, right? But like the way he just stops with his hands still frozen in that final position, and then slowly pulls it back down to his body as he's watching this thing on the bed scream and writhe. Like you really could think that he's mesmerized here, and maybe he is in a way, because in his mind he's seeing how far, like you said, Father David, how far this sick little girl is willing to go to make it seem real, right?
And again, just to compare to the book, so in the book, as you've been saying, we know that the holy water is fake,
right?
So he has decided that not in the previous chapter, because Blatty's chapters are very long, but in the previous section of this chapter, he's like, I have an idea, and he tells us his idea and his hypothesis.
This is back like in his dorm. He's like,
several scenes before. And so in the movie, this is new to us, so it wouldn't work for us. I don't think Blatty was necessarily thinking that if we do see him slumping his shoulders, etc., and going, oh, fiddles, right? like that's too confusing for us in the audience, right? Because we don't have that pre-information. So we aren't going to find out. So we could read this, right, ambiguously, Kuleshov wise, and not know what's going on in his head. And then all of our answers are wrong.
Yep. That's Friedkin. All your answers are wrong.
Aw, man. Oh. Can't I have one right answer? No.
Nope. No. Okay, we cut from there, and now we are zooming in on Linda Blair as she continues to writhe in pain. And suddenly, we hear her making some really weird sounds. I'm pretty sure this is the movie that taught me what backwards talking sounds like. Like it has a really specific sound. It sort of fades in and then gets louder and then abruptly stops, right? And that's because naturally when we make words, we sort of like explode outward at the beginning and then we trail off, right? So even just the word like I has a sharp, abrupt, explosive beginning and then it sort of like fades out, right? So then when it's backwards, it's like, like that, right? And so now I think for everyone today, I think backwards talking is immediately recognizable, right? But I'm curious how it was perceived back then. Like, actually, I can't even remember when what I thought when I first saw this. I can't remember a time I didn't understand what was going on here, but there must have been a time when I was like, what the hell is this? Like, do you guys remember first seeing and hearing the scene and what you thought?
I think I'm with you. I think I understood it as backwards talk immediately.
Yeah, because it takes a minute to clue in because Captain Howdy's making all other kinds of noise here. But yeah, my my parents are big Beatles fans, and so we had the complete catalog. And so my father pointed out the backmasking to me and my brother on Revolution number 9, which fueled the whole Paul is dead kind of urban legend. If you played the vinyl record backwards, you would get this message: Paul is dead, miss him, miss him. And that was part of the play with vinyl recording, and then as magnetic tape became more and more common as a recording medium, you had audio engineers playing with the ability to record something forwards and then play it backwards into the mix so that it was presented as something strange and alien. I remember even like Ben Burt talking about as a kid, like on some like Flash Gordon serial or something, there was an alien race where they had done something with the audio to record it, play it backwards, and then have the actors speak it forwards again, like as a phonetic recreation or to create this sense of an alien language. Cool. Yeah. And so Ben Burt was always trying to figure out how they did that and to do it himself because he's Ben Burt. That's who he is. He's obsessed with sound. But I think for me, listening to this, there's that sound where like, yeah, this is like speech. And the only reason I would not immediately have thought of it as backwards talk is because we're dealing with a demon. So maybe this is some kind of actual demonic language and not just English backwards.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So what the Revolution number 9 is like the 68 or so. So that would have been, about when, right as people are discovering, because you weren't you weren't alone, right? I think a lot of people were like really impressed by that album and started to learn about audio and all that. So, because that, Lester, you know about that? Paul
the Paul is dead? Yeah.
Just wanted to be sure.
Well, do I know
McCartney's dead?
Do I know about the fact or do I know about the thing that was happening?
It really happened as far as I
all right.
Who's to say, Lester? Who's to say that Paul McCartney wasn't replaced?
Who's to say? Or when's to say?
Or how's to say? I don't like this bit anymore.
No.
Right. But so that's like this really cool audience interactive thing of people going and trying to find, not just hidden meanings, right? Because that is crazy. Paul was not dead. But like, how it's made, how it's put together. So I imagine that there were more people who understood this as backmasking or reverse talk than not in 1973 when this came out.
Interesting.
But enough that it wouldn't be like, Karis, you're an idiot. That's clearly backwards speech, right? Like there might be people in the audience like, oh, I know what this is. I know what this is. But not like, how does he not know what this is?
Yeah. Gotcha.
And I think Karis does recognize something comprehensible in it, because why else would he move the microphone closer to her face if there wasn't if there wasn't something worth recording here? If he just thought of this as like, okay, the usual grunts and groans, okay, whatever. But his action focuses our attention on the noise that she's making. And that action is him expressing his character's interest in the sound. And it's a visual way for us to hear more attentively.
Yeah. He is, I got the impression that he is either studied enough in language or he has a language lab director friend who is, that he would recognize this has like a certain cadence. It has a certain, it's different from gibberish in that it has like a style and a cadence. They keep saying cadence in the book. So I'm going to keep saying it. Cadence. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So that raises a question that I've been wondering. If we can spoil it here. We know that this is an act. Howdy is playing Karis right now. Howdy already knows that the holy water is not real, right? He's leading Karis on. This is a multi-layered duplicity, right? Karis thinks Reagan is the one playing tricks, but in actuality, it's Howdy playing tricks, right? By pretending to be Reagan playing tricks, right?
Everybody got that?
I followed you.
Yes. Yeah. Let me
find the flow chart in your show notes.
Yeah. So it's not Reagan playing tricks. It's Howdy pretending to be Reagan playing tricks. Yeah.
Yes.
So then my question is Howdy banking on Karis figuring the backwards speech out? Like, this is actually something that really scares me, that Howdy is that good of a liar that he can pretend to be caught off guard like this. Because what looks like what happened is that Karis did something. And Howdy has now slipped into this like semi-conscious state where he's rambling what seems to be nonsense, but then we come to find later that it has meaning. And every time I read it or watch it, I'm like, yeah, Karis cracked the code. And I got to remind myself, wait, no, he didn't, right? This is all a setup, right? Howdy was banking on him. Howdy was like hoping that he would figure it out. And so not only that, but like, so there's two layers to this. There's one, it seems like what Karis did is forcing Howdy to do something against his will. Like he didn't mean to do the backward speech, and he's been put into a trance, and now he's doing the backward speech. But then the other part of that is when we decode the backward speech, it seems like there's many voices talking, and they're all talking to each other, and they're all talking over each other, and they're like, "Oh, fear the priest, no, not this one," or "Let's wait, no, let her die," and they're arguing with each other. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, we know from Father Marin there is only one. So Howdy has put up this like one man, one act play backwards to trick Karis, who may never even figure it out. That's the thing that's blowing my mind right now. Like what if Karis just never figured it out? Like that's a lie hidden within a lie. You know what I mean?
Well, this is the Dark Knight Skyfall Black Panther trope that is just something that bothers me. In The Exorcist, it's so early and we aren't necessarily thinking about this, but this is the villain who wants to be caught and pretends not to want to be caught, right? Because that's the only way it could be, right? As you're saying, right? Because Captain Howdy will say Marin backwards, and then you have to call Marin. So Captain Howdy's plan is to bring Marin there, right? Like otherwise, what? Yeah. Otherwise, what is it?
Like I'm just thinking, like if Karis didn't figure it out, and then he comes to the house for another visit, and he's like, "Oh, I bet you were wondering what that weird language was." and Karis is like, "Yeah, I just can't figure it out." It's like, "Oh, wait, you really? You can't figure? Oh, well, maybe you should go back to the language lab and retrace your steps. Hey, let's rewind and just, like he's really trying to like, come on, Karis, I set this whole thing up. You gotta like,
or eventually you just be like, Marin.
Yeah, you know what? I'm hungry. You might want to give me a steak, but you'll have to marinate it first.
I wonder whether this isn't a situation that Captain Howdy is setting up so that he wins either way. So if Karis figures it out, then he gets Marin, and that's a win in Howdy's book because Howdy wants to take down as many people as possible, and let's just aim right for the top. Howdy is feeling his oats, and he thinks, all right, let's shoot for Marin. That guy's been a thorn in the devil's side for a while. Let's take care of him. Yeah. And if Karis doesn't figure it out, then Regan wastes away to nothing. This little girl dies. Her mother is left bereft. This priest is left feeling powerless, and his movement away from the faith, away from his priesthood, and away from his ability to sacramentally represent the person of Jesus Christ in the world is going to be undone. That is also a win. So for, again, it's four-dimensional chess here. If we're going to buy into the idea that Captain Howdy knows what he's doing. That's the only way I can make sense of this scene where Captain Howdy is the one in charge. Maybe he isn't, though, because I think there is still some honesty to the sense of it being forced out of him. Because if, Captain Howdy, he's very smart, but the thing that you have to be smartest about is knowing how other people are dumb. And so Captain Howdy knows how dumb Karis is. And if he wanted Karis to get Marin there, he would just say the name Marin forwards.
Right.
So I think there's a way in which something is at work here. And again, as a Catholic priest, I believe very strongly that there is a act of God that is happening in this room because I believe as a Catholic that a man ordained to the priesthood is set apart to represent the person of Jesus Christ in a particular way that is ordered toward a ministerial reality and ministering and making present the mysteries of God's mercy and power and love in the world. And so while Karis is wrestling with his faith, while Karis doesn't really see himself as a priest, in Catholic theology, he still is. His sacramental ordination remains a fact of his spiritual life, whatever he feels about it. It is not based on his own subjective experience. So there is still a spiritual reality that Howdy recognizes here. And because that remains a spiritual fact, it remains a spiritual window for the power of God to come through. And so even in this kind of imperfect, not up to snuff, spiritually, theologically speaking, approach that Karis is taking, still there's a priest in the room, and he is trying to do what is best for this girl, this person made in the Catholic understanding in the image and likeness of God, made for freedom, not made to be possessed and made a plaything of evil spirits. And Karis is trying to do what's best for her. He's not going about it the right way, but there is still some authentic charity. He's putting himself in this situation with no obvious benefit to himself. And he's doing so, I wouldn't say perfectly selflessly, but still with a sense of love, with a sense of charity here. And that's not nothing. God is not proud. God will take what we give him. And so I wonder if the finger of God isn't pressing upon Captain Howdy a little bit here and forcing this admission out of him simply because there's a priest in the room trying to do what is right. And that is where Marin's name kind of escapes out of the evil one, where the Captain Howdy admits to the truth when he's asked who you are. It's like, I am no one. And I think that's true, but that ultimately evil is a privation of the good. It's a nothingness. There is no person there. That's what makes the devil such an effective liar. He lies about himself. It's like, you mentioned The Dark Knight. It's the Joker. He has a multiple choice backstory. There is nothing there. He is no one. There is no personality. There's no motive to discern. There's no history to figure out. There's no person to engage with. There's just a nothingness there that constantly vomits up all these lies to try and drag us into the same abyss.
That's really, that actually kind of goes with something Keenan and I were talking about in, well, I guess we have to say future episodes because we're re-recording this episode, folks. Remember?
Gosh.
So we've actually recorded like 94, 95. Yeah. Right? Time and space,
Do they know that we know that they know that we're in the past?
Keenan, did you ever have a recording that we did do with?
Why is my nose bleeding?
When suddenly I'm speaking back to but no, like Keenan and I talked about that phrase, "I am no one," right? And we haven't gotten to it yet, folks. But I've always been fascinated by that, the "I am no one." And since Father David brought it up here, the idea that and I think we theorized that because we were talking before about comparing the Christian devil to other Abrahamic religions, right? In Judaism and Islam, and there seem to be these gifts that are exclusive to man, to human beings,
right,
that perhaps these unclean spirits covet. And we were thinking of, well, there could be free will, there could be a couple other things, right? And maybe perhaps a physical body, right? And one other thing that the "I am no one" line kind of brought to me was, what if another thing that is coveted by these demons is just an identity, like you are yourself. You are part of you. Like you can name yourself. You can identify yourself as something rather than just kind of like part of this swirling abyss, right? And that could be like Captain Howdy could be experiencing, I don't know, what it is to be individual, like for the first time in millennia since he is possessing this girl. He's like, oh, this is what it is to be.
Yeah, she has an identity and a mother,
right?
and a lifespan, and
right. I have hands, I have feet, I have a name. Like, this is weird, right?
I don't remember saying that in the future, but if I did, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't remember saying that in the future. That's a really cool. Yeah. It's a weird time, folks. Yeah. But yeah, what do you guys think of that?
I think the question of identity is an interesting one, because to have an identity means that I am capable of entering into relationship. Because if I know who I am, I know who the other is. And at the root of every relationship is love, the capacity to will the good of the other as other. In order to do that, I have to know who I am, and I have to know who the other person is. And I think that's why unclean spirits are rooted in evil. There is no love there. There is an abnegation of self, and there is just an all-devouring ego. Everything has to belong to this thing that I am. There is no differentiation between others. It's like how in children's psychological development, young infants don't have a sense of self. Everything is them, and they have that sense of immediacy. Now, they grow out of that, thank goodness, but it's also why young children are very hard to deal with, and why they have a hard time understanding that other people have brains, and they have needs, and they have things that they want that aren't the same as what the child wants. And the unclean spirit, like someone like Captain Howdy, is that tendency all grown up in a certain sense, just absolutized and turned into this devouring abyss where there is no differentiation of identity. I am no one. Everyone is no one. And I think that's part of the terror of the name of Legion in, say, the Gospel of Mark, that there would be all of these voices inside this single person, but all these voices are still one somehow. It's like this dark and antithetical image of the Christian understanding of God as one God in three persons. But there is a perfect relationship of love where you have the paradox of one and three held in tension with each other, whereas everything collapses in the egotism of the one in someone like the devil or Captain Howdy.
Interesting. Oh, very good explanation. I love these talks. I love these philosophical talks. So now we have cut to a close-up on Karras's face, and he certainly looks convinced right here, right? He asks the demon, "Who are you?" Right? We cut back over the shoulder, and we see Reagan as she continues to twist on the bed. And if you listen, you can hear Howdy saying, "No one may," right? And some of you might know already what that means, right? Another question, really quickly. Is the footage also in reverse here?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because her movement seems a little bit unnatural, right? Like in the way that like she can't, like I can't put it into words, right? But
I was trying to recall as Father David was talking about Ben Burt discovering backmasking in the audio of the Flash Gordon. I was trying to recall there is some horror movie somewhere. There's probably multiple times actually where they recorded people walking backwards and then put it in reverse. So to me, right? I don't think that's what's happening here. It would be. A little jerkier than this, I think.
It's brief enough where you might not catch it if it did happen, and I feel like they didn't catch anything. Like there's no like stray hair that falls upward or anything like that, right? But like if that's true, if this is played like forward motion, then that means Linda Blair is lip syncing backwards speak perfectly.
That's a good point. I think that's what's happening. I'm looking back at this moment now. Yeah, I don't believe that the video footage is reversed. So
okay,
yeah, that's good. Yeah, she's doing some strong work here.
Pretty good stuff. Yeah. All right, so we cut back to Karras, and he looks troubled, right? He may not understand what Howdy is saying, but it is affecting him, right? And here, Howdy begins to scream in multiple voices. And as it crescendos, we cut back, and we are closer on the bed, closer to that hideous face. Again, folks, all praise to Dick Smith and Linda Blair. This is scary stuff. And folks, just as we are looking at this face, another sound comes out of nowhere. Keenan, Father David, what is this? It sounds like both organic and inorganic at the same time. Like I know that at certain points they did in fact combine Howdy's voice with like animal noises, like a lion roaring and stuff like that, right? It sounds like this could be like a bear or a lion, but it also sounds like it could be like a heavy metal thing, like a chair scraping across the floor. Like I see those memes, like those TikToks where like they take the T-Rex sound from Jurassic Park, and then they just dub it over like somebody dragging a chair across the floor. It's like, you know, and it almost sounds like that. It almost sounds like something big and heavy.
Well, like I think it's just the tape recorder scraping across the floor as Karras moves the microphone closer.
Exactly.
We're plagued with wires in this age.
Yes, I like, I'm teaching classic TV right now at UNLV and like the history of television. And I think it's fun when you show students like a remote control back in the day, which had a wire attached to it. So it was still called even a remote control, but it had a wire, and that just so countered everything we thought.
Right. Still remote. It's technically remote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's still remote.
Yeah. And there will come a day in like a generation where just a remote control will be an object of historical fascination. Like, what does it? We control everything through our implants that we have in our foreheads. So why would you need anything in order to? Or even now, just with the phone, your phone can be your remote for so many devices.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Your phone can be your wallet. Your phone can be your address book, your map, right?
But it's like, I went on a date with this guy. We didn't get along together. Like my implant in my brain is Apple. He's on Android, right?
We're just not compatible.
We don't describe like literally not compatible, right? We're gonna have some weird Android Apple baby. Can't have that. No. But yeah. Okay, so now we cut from here to a really cool shot. We are downstairs looking up, and we are following Karras as he goes down the hall. And if this was a person and not a camera, their head would do a complete 180 as we follow him down that double set of stairs, right? And again, we are positioning things between us and the camera. There are points where we are looking up through the rectangular structure of the stairway or through the bars of the banister, right? We've seen this so many times in the movie. I love the decision to make it seem as if the camera is another person, right? Is us in the scene, watching and following the characters as they move, right? But not from a place that a person can't be, right? You know what I mean? Like we really could be standing there at the bottom of the steps, looking up and turning our head as Karras comes down, right? Maybe not all the way around, but
Yeah, that seems to be something that Friedkin and Owen Roizman, the cinematographer, are really interested in this movie. Like, again, not necessarily the one that you notice when you're watching it the first time because you're so taken by the story, but yeah, we're constantly just looking at regular spaces from expressionist angles, right? German expressionists or otherwise. That is something that Friedkin, who, in the French Connection, is very dirty, is more the feeling of it, right? Like him being behind ledges or shooting through grates and shooting through staircases, right? Makes the picture look dirty. Here we're using some of the similar tendencies, but it doesn't look dirty. It looks, I don't know what it looks.
I would say it looks unsettling because we get a personal perspective on this scene. It's not I brought it up earlier, but you compare this with the shots in The Shining, which are very impersonal. They're removed from the characters. They're made to feel isolated in the hotel, or it's a little too close, like when we're following Danny on the Steadicam through the hallways. That there's this sense like their space is framing what's going on. Here we have rather the character determining the focus. We're less interested in the space of the house and more interested in watching Karis come out of the room. And to me, I think that speaks to this sense of oppression that settled over the house. That even though Karis isn't in the room with Captain Howdy is still aware of what's happening. He's still watching as Karis is leaving. Karis doesn't get to escape. It's not as easy as closing a door and being able to move on. There's a malevolence that is tracking with him, because we can't have like the classic Hitchcock down shot to emphasize that Karis is powerless in this because he's just a tiny man in a small house. No, but we have this kind of almost predator kind of view through the bars of the banister, as if some kind of animal is hiding in the bush and watching its prey walk unknowingly by.
I like that a lot, and then this will bleed into our next minute, but eventually Karis will cross where the camera is, and so like it is like, oh, we're the camera, we're predatory, but then Karis will pass by us without noticing us, which I think is in the context of Father David's talking about, that's even scarier. Like we get to look at him, and then he doesn't even know that he doesn't even suspect that we're there.
That reminds me of that moment in Silence of the Lambs where Starling is walking through the darkened house, and we got our Buffalo was like, oh wait, where isn't she a big fat person? We got him, we got Buffalo Bill with the night vision goggles, and he's like reaching out to her. Right? He's right there, but she doesn't know
the edges of her hair.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lester.
Well, sweet dreams. You too, listeners. Okay. Now, as Karis is walking, we can hear Chris, though we can't see her. She is saying, no, I'm like in seclusion, right? And then we got to pause and no, I'm just exhausted from work. Without being told or shown, we can tell she's on the phone with someone, and we can also tell, we can tell a lot from just those two sentences, half of the conversation, and we can guess that someone is asking where she's been, when she's coming back, and we might find out more in the next minute. But for now, that is all of my notes. Keenan, Father David, is there anything we missed?
Oh, that's everything I have.
Yeah, I like, just to tie it back to the point you made about Chris being an actor. Chris is acting here. She is acting like a tired actor, and she is putting up a front. She's putting up a facade for the person on the other side of the phone. And so I think that's also part of why Chris is an actor in this story, because she has to pretend that everything is better than it actually is. Because if you had a normal person who was not trained in presenting a character and presenting emotions as if they were real, then that they would just completely come apart at the seams. They would not be able to go out and meet the priest on the bridge in the middle of the park with everyone else living their normal lives all around them. They would just go running down the street with their hair on fire. So this is part of the kind of the framing of the story. We're able to believe that this is happening because Chris is able to maintain just enough normalcy so that nobody around her is freaking out about this weird situation in her own house.
Right.
That is a really good point, Father David. Yeah, because I mean, like we were talking about before, how Chris is, I guess, in like parodies of this movie, or like little skits and sketches and things like that, sketches. She is always portrayed as kind of like the hysterical mom. It's like, oh my God, everything is falling apart, right? But we've commented on this show how she is able to present this facade of like being together and being able to function until she's like alone and she's able to kind of like let it all out, right? Yeah.
When she doesn't have an audience.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, wow. Very, very good point, Father David. Okay. Guys, I guess that's it. Folks, this has been another excellent Exorcist Minute. I've been Lester Ryan Clark. You can reach me on all the socials as Lester Ryan Clark.
And I've been Keenan Diaz, and you can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd as Howdy Keenan.
And I've been Father David Mowry. I have everything together in one place at fatherdavidmowry.com. You can see my other appearances on other Movies by Minutes podcasts, collected and organized there. I'm also on Letterboxd, so if you want to know my thoughts on movies that I have just walked out of the movie theater and seen, you can find me at venerable_bead.
Excellent. Wonderful. And folks, we got our listener group, Compelling Conversations. Go check that out and request to join, and we'll let you in here with us. Thank you so much to everyone who has shared the show by word of mouth or on social media, and a big thank you to everyone who has given us a 5-star ratings on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to our show. We really appreciate that. It's going to help our little podcast grow and find more cool people like you. Keenan, Father David, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Oh, I think I am too.
Folks, until next time, the power of acting compels you. To be or not to be? Captain Howdy, to be no one or not to be no one. How is that possible?
Methinks this howdy doth protest too much.
Literally.
Alas, poor Karis, I knew him.
Get thee to another. Oh, that actually works. That's,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey.
What dreams make up? No. Oh, Max von Sydow was in that movie. Yeah, sure.
At least in all the movies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's in all of the movies.
Behold, I am dead. My soul is in the sky.
You can't just say where your soul is.
Oh, it burns. It burns. Line.
It
Line.
burns.
What?
It burns. It burns.
It burns. It burns. Okay, so like 3 times? You're saying 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and is like should I do like an upward tick on the third one, or I just like I don't know, like what am I feeling here? Like what is my motivation?
What do you think?
Don't ask me that. You're the director.